And we can just start with we can just let the music go right now, like just music.
Wait, are we recording
Well,
now?
We
yeah,
are
that's
recording.
starting
The
now.
recording
We
has
are.
started. Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of ANWA Beyond Sunday. My name is Candace. I am one of your hosts, along with four other brilliant minds here, and we are discussing the word of the Lord that we, as a church family, received a few weeks ago. And let's dive in. Pastor Dave, you had a lot to talk about on our break. Uh,
Yeah, I know.
yeah.
That's so
Well,
We're
you
good.
know how to set
revelating,
this
and
up.
we
I
Now
He
see.
was. He was.
he was
I
moving
feel,
in power.
this is Candace. I already felt like I was talking too much. So
No, you're not. It's okay.
Throw the
okay.
grenade, Dave. You know your job is to throw the grenade, and we'll clean it.
Right.
We'll
Well,
clean it
wait, we
up.
will try to clean up.
Yeah.
Right.
uh, I was saying as we were on break, is that we did hear that this is the Noah year, but we also heard a few other. This is 2025 is the year of. So we know that it's an accountable year. We discussed that on the last episode. Uh, we know that it's the year of the burden of God. We know that it's the year of the sun. We know that it's a Josiah year, it's a diplomat year, it's a cure year. There's a lot in that. So, my question to you all is how do we hold all of those various things in tension? How did you hear it and receive it? And how might we encourage everybody else to step into the varying facets of what the Lord has revealed to us for the year? Question
I'm gonna
back
go.
to you. Point returned, Dr.
Yes,
Candace.
and I was just gonna say I'm gonna go first because I don't have a lot to say. So I'm gonna move out of
Don't
the way.
believe it. Don't believe it, y'all.
No, at all.
I will say um a couple of things, like in terms of like legit time. Like we're recording today, but we got the word of the Lord what maybe about a month ago, 3 to 4 weeks ago. So it's still been a short time, and I know for me it was just a lot to process and
Mhm.
digest. So I'm also not, and this is not an excuse, but I'm also not pressuring myself to try and digest all of that in a month, right?
Yeah.
And kind of like what we talked about on the in a previous conversation in our previous episode when we were defining prophecy, these are like eternal seeds that are now being unveiled and released in like Chronos time. And
Yeah.
so what I like me personally, what I've been doing is obviously going over it, praying through it, but also giving grace to the what can I call it? The revelation process. Um in that what I'm understanding today, he's gonna illuminate even the more tomorrow and next week and
Mm-hmm.
next year. And so I'm not confining this eternal seed to a timeline or to a time frame rather. So yeah, especially given how analytical I am and how okay, this is the word of the Lord for 2025, so that means all of these things have to happen in this calendar
Right.
year, and that is absolutely not the case. So yeah, that's kind of like where I've been. It was just a lot to digest, so I overwhelmed is not the right word, but very much like like I don't know, stimulated. It was just a lot. So I've been processing. See?
I don't. I don't know if my approach is a 15 years walking with God approach, like y'all said last episode, but with all the things listed out, I was like, okay, God, well, where do you want me to start first? Like, where do you want me to hone in to pay attention to pray into? And I was kind of tracking as I was listening, where do I feel burdened?
Mm.
And so I think it can be overwhelming if you're trying to digest the entirety of it in one go. But I guess my admonishment would be like, hey, actually start where you feel burdened. and actually press into that in prayer and discerning or studying whatever you need to do to have a better understanding of how God wants you to posture yourself for it.
Admonish us.
Okay.
But I even think that it beautifully connects to the whole concept of family again, because if we start pressing into, okay, I'm going to start with where I feel burdened, that means for me, what I'm hearing is it's echoing the fact that we can't do this year alone. Because I may be burdened for this, but the reason why I need to partner with other people, because you're going to pick up a burden for another part of this. And once we're all together, we're all carrying the burden of the Lord. So
Mhm.
I think it again is kind of rehearsing that idea of a family. Even when he talks about this being a year of fathers and sons, and the year of the son, one of the things that he said, uh, a quote that I wrote down when he was talking about it was that fathers must turn their hearts to sons, but sons must turn their obedience to fathers.
Mhm.
I thought, well, first of all, this is so anti-American culture because I think we are so bred in individualism, and we are groomed in it, and we are developed. Everything is about becoming your own individual person. So I don't even think even in our culture fathers are fighting that whole obedience thing, because that's not a part of the culture. You're my father to make me an individual, not to make me obey commands and instructions you're giving. But when you change that mindset again, it is all again, God is kind of working on this family dynamic, and work and healing family dynamics, because one of the things he brought up also with the father and sons is he said, this would be the year that you have to forgive your father, that you don't
Yeah.
have to like how he acts, but you have to honor who he is. And so again, it's like, hey, we working together as family, but while we working together, that means healing and reconciliation and old wounds, and he's pouring the oil and the wine in. All of that is happening in that same type of year. And I think it's good for us to see both sides of that.
I think it's important when we talk about family. Um, and I believe I'm an intercessor. I really do believe that.
You think so?
Uh,
You
I
think you're
really
an
Oh
intercessor?
my
My
God.
God, I was
believe
That's
wondering
that
about
Jesus
that's
that.
is
Wow,
thank
that's
you,
Man,
I
that
was
is
Jesus, for the
curious too.
Yeah,
revelation.
Wow.
I can
Yeah,
I
honestly
didn't
mark that
know.
off
intercessor.
my list because I was
Yeah.
wondering.
Yeah, because that was one of the
That's
things
good.
I've been doing that too, Ricky. Just wondering if he knew.
Wow, wow, wow.
Right,
I
right.
really do believe in that, and and I believe of the body of believers being the kingdom of priests. So I believe that everybody is an intercessor, but I do believe that on the family dynamic that that sister, that brother, that mother, that father are intercessory types and intercessory roles that are all birthing God's will, but also defending and shamaring and watching and mediating the family at the same time. Like there is a way that the sister can cover that in the ways that the brother can't. There's the way that the father can defend in ways that mothers can't. And when all of these people are working together, there is a level of protection and preservation that sparks growth and value, right? Like without preservation, there is no value. You don't even have time to grow, right? That like without preservation, there's death, essentially. So it's a suicidal assassination type thing that comes when defense is not and preservation is not there. So when that brother is not able to be a fence, and when you remove yourself from the company of brothers, and then that father who gives the law, the edicts, the lay of the land, the instructions, when you have no instruction, you have no future. Like you have nothing to your name. You have no inheritance without instruction. That mother, I mean, is the teacher. She is a part of get being that lawgiver. So when you remove these dynamics from your circle and you just pick one that you like because you like the voice of that one, right? Or you like the way this one shows up and you avoid this one. You are essentially like removing your staff. You are literally, and then we say we're alone. No one understands me. No one likes me. I'm always doing everything by myself. but you have a preference on family. Like you have a preference on how you want to be defended and how you want people to show up. When in actuality, if everyone is doing their roles according to how God gave them, you don't know what you need. Like we don't know the future enough to be able to communicate what we need right now. Like we
Mhm.
think we know what we can really I need understanding. I like actually understanding is definitely idolatry for you right now. Like you don't need understanding. Maybe the next person does, but that might not be what you need, right? And so when we try to tailor what we want family to look like and how we think it should be, especially in an American context, we ultimately remove God's divine staff because if he's also God, he picked the family. He literally picked the father, the mother, the sister. I mean, he literally chose that. And when we decide to be like, it's me by myself, I'm gonna go and create my own. I don't like how y'all are moving. Those are the people that walk around like bastards all day,
Mm.
all day. Nobody likes me. Nobody supports me. It's me by myself. I did this. So those are the self made people. They are some of the most toxic people on earth. They're going to be successful, but it won't last. It's never sustainable. Because if you build something by yourself, you have to sustain it by yourself.
Right.
Yep. Amen.
I mean, you want to keep going?
I mean,
Woo.
I, what I want to go back a little bit. Something Ricky pointed out. And I think it goes hand in hand with what you're saying, Dre, is that we have a culture that breeds and desires independence. So the idea of sonship, naturally and spiritually, is almost a foreign concept to us. And I think people, even myself, who spent a lot of time trying to understand it, have most people have a hard time understanding the context of our biblical texts. And sonship and daughtership in that context is very different than what we experience, to the point where sons didn't really leave home. They continued. That's why inheritance is such a big deal. The son continued to live on the land that the family had, and as the son entered and engaged in his own enterprise, it was for his father's household. It wasn't for his own. He didn't go start building his own new thing. So that concept of sonship and obedience and the interplay of those things is very hard for 2025 Christians to really get their head around. That's why when we hear the story of the loving father, not the prodigal son, the story of the loving father,
that's
Woo-hoo.
good.
when the son takes his inheritance and he goes and squanders it, why is his older brother so mad? Because his brother was supposed to be there helping them build their father's legacy for the family, not squandering it. He's not only is he disappointed, and there's a whole thing to unpack there, but he doesn't understand. Like the younger brother that goes and squanders his inheritance abandoned sonship in that. Now his father said, "You're still my son, and I'm going to bring you back in." But that again is something that we don't grasp today. We don't grasp that the things that our Father has given us are ours. The things that our Father has are ours. Our inheritance is His. It's here now. It's not something we get when He dies. And yeah, there is that whole transfer, but that concept we don't get and we don't live like it's truth.
What's so weird, Dave, is that especially for me, I come from a broken home. Like I come from a two parent household, but I got a lot going on in my family. And so for those of us who oh, I don't have an inheritance, or my daddy ain't left me nothing, my daddy ain't built
Sure. Yeah.
nothing, which is very Americanized. But when you look at the brilliance of who you are only who you are because God had a word for your dad or
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
your uncle or your grandfather. And we know it true because in the book of Kings, God is like sabotaging these new kings because they don't look like David. Because the prophecy was for David.
Yep.
And y'all are living out this royalty, these riches, this land, because God didn't just have a word for Israel, but he had a personal covenant with David,
Mm-hmm.
which didn't die with David. And so ultimately you have an inheritance. So like even this whole like materialized, like I have nothing to my name, like my dad wasn't there, or I don't know him, or he left. It's like, yo, everything that you have in you is the inheritance. Your ability to build, your ability to think the way you think, your ability to look completely different than everyone else and succeed, your ability to thrive and like you get put in the wilderness and you still come out on top. That you weren't born that way. Like that is something that came with the DNA. Like that
Mm-hmm.
is the inheritance. And which is why it's important that we forgive our father.
Yeah.
I was just about to say
Absolutely.
that, so just keep going.
That's awesome. That's good. That's
Yeah.
good.
That's an area I would love to hear other perspectives on, because I have grown up in a very privileged way where I have known my natural father and he has provided for me in a material way, and he will leave me an inheritance. And that is something that I think I can talk about uniquely in that regard, because it is something that I have lived and experienced. But I don't understand the father wound. I don't
Mm,
understand. I mean, I understand it intellectually, and I can deeply empathize with the thought of not having that. But that forgive your father is, I think, a really hard place for a lot of people. And I would love to hear more about your all's thoughts on that.
I'm getting a
Anyway,
PhD in this, but I love you, Dad, if you're out there and listening to this.
Now this is big. This
This
is
is-
yeah. No,
big.
that's what I was about to say
You
Because
gotta
now.
honor this moment. This is a real moment.
because listen,
yeah.
listen, this is a
3 seconds to
directive.
just.
This is a directive that came out of the word of the
Whew.
Lord. It's a year of the sun.
Mhm,
And one of the things was forgive that man because a double portion is coming.
mhm.
Hmm.
So this is
Yeah.
not something to take lightly. And I have to ask myself, what do I need to forgive my father for, as much as I can look up to him, as much as I can say, he's here and I've gotten to experience his presence and his love and the inheritance that he will leave me. I've gotten both, naturally and spiritually, like I've gotten to experience that, but there is still a directive there, forgive him. So I have to reconcile that myself, but it's different if you don't really have a relationship or you don't have the ability to communicate with your dad. Maybe your dad's passed away. Like there's a lot of weight in that directive, and it's not just an idle statement that
Yeah,
somebody made in passing on the stage. Like there's a real reason that was an instruction.
absolutely. I think one of the most liberating things for me in this whole journey, because I didn't grow up with my father actively a part of my life, post my parents getting a divorce. But one of the things that liberated me in this whole journey was, and it was out of a conversation with Chief, was I was trying to work through this forgiveness thing. Like, okay, I gotta forgive, gotta forgive. Okay, I forgive, I release, I said it, I confessed it, I got all that out. And Chief said something to me that was simple but profound. And he said, you can't forgive something that you haven't grieved over yet,
Mm.
and that you've got to start with acknowledging and accepting that if you're dealing with the father wound, hey, it's okay to accept and acknowledge and grieve the fact that I did miss out on something because my father was not there. I could have learned this quicker if my father was there. I could have gotten this much further ahead if my father was there, but I did not. And one of the ways that I think can keep us out of getting to the place of forgiveness is we so, for the lack of a better term, Christianize that whole experience. That is, oh no, I ain't lose nothing. I got everything I needed. Even if you went, no,
Mm.
no, I lost something. There's a loss there, and it's okay to accept that and grieve it, so that you don't have that emotional blockage in your soul when it's time for you to forgive. Because now you forgive and you don't even know what you're forgiving for, because you ain't even really sat in that. You haven't
Right.
accepted it or embraced it. So I encourage anybody that has father wounds, or issues with their father not being present in their life, be okay with taking time in that moment to accept the fact that, okay, you did miss out on that. You could have had been further along if he was present. You could have had those conversations that you wish, was had when you were growing up, to kind of save you from some of the chaos in your life. Grieve that well, because to the extent that you grieve well, you're actually giving yourself the power to forgive well, because you're
Mm.
doing it,
That's good.
really cleansing the soul out and allowing God to fill that void. So I'm telling you, it ain't easy. And you have days, speaking from experience, you have days like, I'm forgiven. That's good. Yeah, I forgive. And then something else will come up. But it's just like forgiveness, because it is an act of faith, and faith is a constant thing you use. I can have faith today for something, and tomorrow we got to regroup. We got to stock back up on faith. I used all my faith yesterday. We got to redo this. Forgiveness.
Hmm. Yep.
Forgiveness is the same way. Like, hey, I forgave today,
Help
but
me in my
tomorrow,
unbelief.
right, something may happen in my life that'll hit me, and I'm like, okay, I gotta choose to forgive again. And so I think that's one of also the lies that the enemy will make you start believing, is that forgiveness is not just, especially when it's caused a wound in your soul. It's not a one time thing. It is a journey. It is a part of the journey of healing, and you have to walk with that. And so, hey, I forgive today, but if something pops up next week, I'm going to make the decision again to forgive,
Mm.
because this thing is coming up, so it's also assaulting my soul again. So I've got another reason to forgive it. Every time it assaults me, I'm gonna forgive it. I'm gonna forgive it. I'm gonna forgive. So be gracious with yourself as you're journeying through that healing process, especially in a year like this where God is like, I'm about to put my finger on that.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, I too come from a fractured home, and I will say I feel like I've done a fair amount of work in the area of forgiving my father. And it's not to say that I've I've arrived. There's no more for me. But I do think that I'm at a at a solid place. But one of the probably the most painful segments of that journey was when God essentially um, very loudly highlighted to me how I projected my disappointment onto him. And so accepting Jesus as Lord, as Savior, King, Redeemer, all of that, yeah, got it intellectually, accepted it in my soul. You start talking to me about God as Father, and it was almost as if it was just like well, what does that mean? And then
Mm.
kind of like to your point, Ricky, with what Chief Lake told you, like I started to go through the rhythm of, oh yeah, well I forgive him, it's fine. But I hadn't, because I hadn't grieved what I lost. And ultimately I never was able to become vulnerable and open with God as Father, because I subliminally projected all of my, not just anger, but sadness, disappointment, lack of hope, lack of expectation onto him. Because it's just like, well, this is what I experienced with my natural father. I've never even seen you.
Mm.
So let me just kind of guard myself. And again, and it's not that I didn't believe, it was just there was a guard up, right? Like to the point where I'm not even going to engage you in this way. I'm not even going to bring myself to the place of being intimate with you, because I don't know what it looks like to not be disappointed. by the person, by the thing whose DNA I carry. So you tell me you created me, great, you did. But my experience has always yielded the man that participated in my creation, Earthside, disappointed me. So let me actually just not. And it was when he started like taking the layers off, it was painful. Um, because I took such, I don't want to say pride, but I really felt like I had a solid relationship with the king. Like, I love God. Like, we are here.
Hmm.
And when he like pulled that sheet back and was just like, we solid, but we ain't nowhere near where we need to be. It was just like it was humbling. And that forgiveness process was excruciating, because again, you have to acknowledge like, oh, this is painful, this was painful, and this is painful. um I've got to acknowledge the time that I've seemingly wasted because of my deficiencies, because of his absence. Now, in God's providence and faithfulness, he's redeemed the time. So nothing really was lost. But in that moment, I feel like I had to like feel the weight and the pain of it so that I can fully embrace Jesus as Father.
Uh, for me, um, so I don't know if this will be everyone's story in terms of how they forgive, but uh, the Lord led me to become my father's intercessor. So grew up in a two-parent household. He was always present. It wasn't until I started doing full-time ministry on campus that God was like, let me put my finger in this father wound that I did not know existed. And I was like, not this, you could have did this before I said yes and got on this campus. But it was a good time. But in the midst of that, God was dealing with how I viewed him. And so in a lot of ways, as Candace was saying, I was projecting some of the places where I was still yearning and wanting my father to show up onto God. I was like, oh, you're not going to do this. Oh, you can't do this. And I was trying to avoid it, and it actually ended up becoming a blow up. Like my father and I, hey daddy, we had a whole like fight. And I remember I like threw the phone. I'm not a person that's explosive, but I remember I chucked the phone across one of the campus common areas, and I was like, I'm done. I don't want anything to do with this man. I'm so angry. And I went to church that Sunday. It was like God had tailored the whole message to me, talking about forgiving parents, and the reality of with how our parents show up is a part of a bigger story of what they were exposed to. And my heart started to break because I'd only know parts of my father's story at the time. And I was like, there are a lot of things that he is overcoming. And the intent of his heart, at least I could say from my father, wasn't to be malicious. He was trying to do the best with what he had, and the deck wasn't stacked as heavily as it could have been. And so I started interceding for him, and God had to really soften, like God was softening my heart in the act of intercession for my father. And I didn't do it with the thought of at some point we'll reconcile, or at some point I'll get to share what happened. I was like, I'm just going to be this quiet intercessor in the background. And I feel like the Lord started doing a similar work in his heart a couple of years later, where he was like, I could have been a better dad. And I was like, whoa, where is this coming from? And it weighed heavy on him, but he was like, I was realizing as people were sharing where I fell short, and I wish that I had shown up in a different way. And I was like, you're not dead, and I'm not dead. So let's start. And so there's a level of reconciliation that I feel like my father and I have experienced because there's a level of open communication, there's a level of forgiveness. But it came out of the space of being his intercessor. Like I saw God work in my heart, I saw God work in his heart, and the ability for us to now walk together is because, yeah, that's that space of intercession. So yeah.
I'm gonna just say this and I'm done, so I don't cry on this podcast. But
That's so good. Cry, Ricky.
This is
uh,
you can cry.
I
I'll cry
think.
with you.
Thank you, Dave. Uh, I think one of the healing moments for me in this journey as well was what forgiveness did for me and my father's dynamic. I remember having the conversation with him and telling him that I loved him. Like I started the conversation with just communicating to him, I love you. And for him, it that simple phrase broke him because he he couldn't reconcile me having issues and still loving him. But
Mm,
me communicating that to him allowed him to express that there's never been a moment in his life where he wasn't proud of me. Like
mm,
and I'm like, I've been waiting on those words before I would say, okay, now I love you, I forgive you. When it took me communicating forgiveness and love first, and I got to reap the benefit of what I've always wanted to hear from him. And I think sometimes when people are struggling to forgive, they think that, if I forgive, I don't want them to feel justified in it. I don't want them to feel like, okay, I'm still got to be the bigger person I'm giving. But your forgiveness really could open the door for you to receive exactly the thing that you've been waiting on. So
wow.
it ended up being a great healing moment for the both of us, because he was allowed to express things that he had never expressed. And it all started with, I love you and I forgive you. And it just opened the door wide open. So just for people that feel like I don't want to make the first move because I'm owed this, well, in order to get what you owed, you may have to make that first move. Tying
Mm,
back to the word of the Lord, some cold turkey's hard stops, some radical obedience is going to be required of you when you are
yeah.
moving in the direction of healing in your life.
And I
I
think
think
that goes back to what Dave was saying about the double portion that we will receive. Forgiven,
Mm,
you'll receive a double portion. Because when that forgiveness is extended, you're actually able to start seeing what you are receiving from them. Like I was
yeah.
able to name like this is what I'm receiving from my father. Kind of what Dre was saying. Like I have his brilliance, the way that my dad can pick up stuff quickly, and my dad will probably say like you do it much better than I do, but I know that I got that from him.
Hmm.
So I'm able to name that because I took that
Mhm.
first step in forgiving and praying and going to him.
Oh,
but love is
absolutely.
still the precursor of the forgiveness. Like
Hmm.
when
It
Ricky is like
is.
when he is saying like I love you, I don't think we realize that we're also so mad because we do love them.
That is also
Like
true.
Mm,
that's the real hostility. The hostility ain't just because like you didn't show up or like you played me. It's about the fact that like why do I still feel the same about like why do I really care?
Hmm.
Because if somebody else did this, I could easily like, hey bud, I don't have to see you ever again.
Absolutely.
But if I say that to my dad or my mom, it's like, no, I have to literally rip you out of my heart because I love you. And I'm only really mad because I love you. And so accepting the fact that like I love this person is the key. Like not about the function of like, okay, how do I forgive? But the first step is I love this person no matter what they did, which is the key to this whole
mm.
salvation piece. Like God is like, oh my God, I'm about to lose it. God is like, we are literally responding the same way God is essentially responding, right? Like we have literally dropped the ball probably every day if we really think about the standard of the season, right? That God has placed on us according to the
Woo.
word of God in our lives.
It's-
We may not be sleeping around or whatever, but we are probably sinning according to the standard, right? This man is watching us every day, like, yeah, y'all say you all love me, but y'all hearts are far from me. And he is agonizing not because of the fact that like y'all are trash, but because I love you
In spite of your trashiness.
in
Yeah.
spite of your trashness. And he's not forgiving us because oh God is just so merciful. No, he's forgiving us because he is madly in love with us.
That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, even as we talked about before, that's where his mercy and his grace comes in, even in talking about the word of the Lord in the Noah year, that 120-year delay, the fact that he gave Moses words to preach, and it wasn't just go prepare for this thing and leave everybody behind. It was, try to get them to repent. Um, God's pursuit of his creation has been there since we broke it.
Pursuit.
And I think we
Heavy.
Heavy.
pursuit.
Dave, you threw a grenade again.
Because
Yeah.
I'm sorry, y'all. I feel
y'all
like that
just
one was like way more than like, hey, let's
y'all just don't
let's
know. I
talk
just
about some
swallowed a whole
doctrinal
week.
things. That was like, hey, let
Yeah, I
me
was like,
let me rip your hearts open real quick. Um, y'all want to throw one
Yeah.
back? I'll take it. I'll take
I
it.
think
Jeez.
it's also I was having a conversation earlier this week. It's also it just does not make logical sense. Kind of like to what Dre was saying. Like I think a lot of times we as Christians unfortunately have lived our lives and this particularly this journey we've projected our earthly experience onto like our spiritual journey versus the inverse. And so when we talk about God's pursuit and we talk about his like his love, it just literally does not make logical sense because we've always projected our earthly understandings and constructs of love onto him. So when you are accustomed to a fractured love or even a love that's seemingly healthy, but it still pales in comparison to his love, if I've created my, if I've constructed my understanding of love solely off of what I've experienced from earthly relationships, I'm always going to be at a loss versus the inverse if I allow him and his nature and his pursuit to shape, then I can like, okay, I need to see sprinkles of this in earthly relationships. Otherwise, I know that whether it's romantic relationships, whether it's platonic relationships, oh, if you're not reflecting this, then maybe you're not good for me. But that's how we end up in fractured spaces because I think we have it wrong. And it just never makes sense because it's not logical. It very much is mind blowing, and it essentially can shift the world off its axis when you like lean in
Mm.
and attempt to process it.
The love of God.
Mhm. We got here from the year of the sun. I mean, it's connected, but
It is. It is. Man,
Mm.
Jesus.
I'm not asking the next question. I'm not doing it.
okay,
I'm
got
not
it,
doing
Dave said you're
got
not
it.
gonna set me up.
Ooh,
it. I love y'all.
Love you too, Dave.
love you so much, Dave.
But
If okay. Oh, go ahead.
God is a God of adoption. As we
Correct.
talk about sonship, I think it's hard to walk past the sonship topic and not talk about God as a God of adoption because
Mhm.
he does seek everyone, and to as many as who believed on him, they were counted as sons. So I think that sonship is something that we shouldn't. Um, obviously we have this directive to reconcile um, our earthly fathership, and I think there's mother wounds too that that certainly need to be addressed. Um, but like remembering that we are adopted into God's family, and that, as we talk about building and building with family, and this adoption into the family, I think is very important, because a lot of people, I don't think, fully understand the repercussions of adoption in that sense, and the inheritance that you gain because of it. And I won't go on too long, but I even look at, if you read the lineage of Jesus in the Gospels, Jesus is not a descendant of David if he's not adopted by Joseph. So adoption is a very important
Hey.
principle that we all need to unpack.
Wait, time out,
Renee.
time out. Yeah, yeah.
Hey. Renee. Hey.
I'm gonna need you to walk through that one more time though. For
Renee. Okay. We're just gonna start announcing grenades when he
grenade
has the
day.
Absolutely.
lead.
That's so
Renee
good.
Day. Renee Day.
Oh.
Change your
if
name,
you if you
Dave.
think about it from a very natural perspective, right? The Immaculate Conception and Mary is pregnant. This is not Joseph's son.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus only becomes Joseph's son if Joseph adopts him. That's why the angel visits Joseph and says, "You can't divorce this woman and leave her." He and when you look at the lineage of Jesus, it's actually Joseph's lineage that's being displayed. Joseph's lineage is defended back to David. And when Joseph says, "Yes, I will marry Mary and adopt him as my son," Jesus inherits David's lineage. That adoption
Yeah.
is why he is he fulfills the Davidic promise. Adoption fulfills promises.
Dog.
And if Jesus is the model and Jesus is the ultimate type, the man was adopted. And
Hmm.
so
I just gotta say this from a like a very fleshly perspective. When I see Ricky recoil like that, I'm like, oh,
Okay.
okay.
woo,
Because my brain has left this podcast. I'm telling y'all right now. Oh my god. Mm, wow.
We could just
I
leave it
don't know
there.
what to say.
I
Yeah, I
Is
was
a,
like, and that's.
I think there's a beautiful conversation to be had there. I realize we've gone a lot of different directions. I didn't mean to derail again,
went the right direction. We went the
but
right
yes.
Yeah. The divine direction.
uh, yeah, sunship. It's the year of the sun, and I think it's important that we step into. I'm sorry. I think it's important that we step into our position as sons and daughters in the kingdom.
Because God was adopted.
Because
I'm done.
I have nothing else.
I, I, I,
I
I
have
don't
nothing else.
I don't care where the timestamp is.
Mm-mm.
I got nothing.
Nope. Nope. I have nothing else.
and this makes
this
Hebrew 1 so much, gives it so much more sense when it's like Moses did well in God's house as a servant, and Jesus built God's house as a son. Just like so there are no inheritance for servants.
Oh,
Y'all.
Like Moses
hmm.
gets a nice memorial. Like Moses really gets like, oh,
mm.
like, he gets a very nice memorial, but like it's really levels to sonship. When you abandon family or when you're not claimed, you have no future. You have nothing. Moses didn't even see the inheritance.
Well, you got to look at it.
Yeah.
Literally from afar off.
But
I
you didn't get to
mean,
walk into it.
literally.
I mean, Chief said those exact words. There is no future without a father, and
Yeah,
I think that um, that's the piece that is part of believing, and that is part of owning sonship. There is a responsibility to admit that you have been adopted into God's kingdom and that you walk with the posture of sonship. Because to your point, Dre, when you don't, you walk as a slave and you don't walk into the promised land.
This is like I'm now like I'm not like mentally just like tracking all of what we have access to in scripture as it pertains to Jesus's life and what he would have looked like had Joseph not legitimized him.
that's where I'm stuck.
I was gonna
I'm
say
like
I feel like that's where I'm part connecting
and I
it
concur
again
right
to the
now.
I'm holding tears back
I'm
right now.
fighting for my
I'm
life. I'm fighting for my life.
I really
like
am.
right
Connecting to the word of the Lord that Chief gave, one of the points he made was that divine directives will demand radical obedience. The fact that we even see that in Joseph, like he had a divine directive that demanded
Yep.
radical obedience to adopt God so that
Yeah.
Jesus could show us how to be a son. That's insane. That's love. That is mercy, and it it humanizes even more the scripture in Hebrews that talks about that we have a high priest that can be touched with our infirmity. Like he can be
Ooh.
touched in those same places because
Yeah.
he's been adopted. It's wow.
But Ricky, that Christianized, like, you know how they be like, oh, I didn't lose nothing. Oh, God is my daddy. Like, like, even Jesus had to submit to an earthly father.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So he wasn't just walking around just following Yahweh. Like, he had to submit to an earthly father.
Mm-hmm.
He
now.
is teaching sonship on every level.
Every level.
Like,
It was the whole reason he was a carpenter. Was
Yep.
Exactly.
because he was a son.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think,
Yeah.
Joseph gets a bad rap because you don't hear about him later in the Gospels. You don't see him at the
Mm.
cross. But this is
He's
just
done enough.
my assumption is that Joseph has died by that time.
That is
Mm.
my
Because there's no
assumption.
way his dad's
Yeah.
not there. It just doesn't. He doesn't adopt him and then not see it through. Like there's no other explanation of Joseph not coming back up, and I'm not going to buy the like he didn't follow. Like Mary's there every step of the way. Like
Yeah.
he's either there with Mary implicitly or he's passed away. That's the only option.
Yeah.
There's no other way Mary could have been there.
Because
I,
Jesus he was fairly secure. And I think a lot of times when we read the gospels, we want to and Philippians, I think in either chapter 2 or 3 talks about this. Like we want to make Jesus a superhuman, when in actuality he actually gave up his rights while he was walking the earth. So he probably was navigating his own insecurities of I don't look like my family and the mannerisms that they have. I don't these proclivities to liking certain snacks or whatever. Like, oh, my sister's just like that's like he didn't have that. And so but when he shows up, he's very secure in who he is. And I can only imagine that Joseph worked overtime to create an environment where there was no separation between Jesus and his siblings. Like, you are mine,
Mm-hmm.
period. Because when Jesus is now walking into his assignment from his heavenly father, he shows up like, I'm here. Let's go. There is no hesitancy. And again, we could easily say, well, he's God, of course. No, again, he laid down his rights. He's not walking around as a superhuman. If
Mhm.
anything, Joseph and Mary, but Joseph has created a space where he's so secure in who he is that this radical obedience that Joseph first demonstrated,
Demonstrated.
Jesus can now
Yeah.
follow after his earthly father by obeying his heavenly one.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's I'm
And then look, his
somebody.
and look, we also forget that his brothers are also part of this, and his sisters are
Hmm.
part of this. And his brothers obeyed, and they followed, and they carried forth Jesus's obedience after his death.
Hmm.
Like the book of Jude is written by Judas, Jesus's brother. It's not we read it as this letter tacked on right before Revelation, but this is Jesus's brother who's now an apostle who's still carrying forth his message and his obedience because he got to witness his father do this. He got to witness the adoption. He got to witness the resurrection. He got to witness those things, and now he's going to continue to carry it forth. Yeah, building with family is important.
How did we? I
It's okay. Yep. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Let me just get some water.
Jesus.
Yeah.
My
Candace,
God.
I have a question for you.
I don't have an answer. I'm gonna try.
No,
We'll see.
I'm just kidding. When you thought about this podcast and what you envisioned, was this where you thought it was going to go?
Yes, in terms of like the diving deep, but this is very much blown all of my expectations to water in the best way like possible. But this is also why I feel like God brought us all together. I can't even attempt to say that I had enough wisdom to choose you all. This was the very much the hand of God. I mean, if no one else is blessed by this, I am. It's so a
I have been
success.
so blessed.
I'm going to weep after this.
I'm definitely going to weep and worship.
Yep. That's after this. That's what's scheduled.
The adopted one.
Oh
Hey,
gosh.
you gotta slow down.
Yeah. Yeah.
The adopted
Yeah.
one.
Oh,
Man.
Man.
I just love Jesus. That was good.
So
I
much.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
The-
Man.
You got to build with family.
You got, yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta be with family.
The word of the Lord is a thread.
Mm-hmm.
Like
It's a thread. It is.
he does not contradict himself.
mm-mm.
Not one
He
time.
Mm,
speaks in complete sentences,
yeah.
gives complete thoughts.
Yep.
And when he speaks, it's going to all make sense. It's supposed to
Yeah.
all make sense.
Yep. And I think even this particular these conversations that we've had around the word of the Lord, I think even these conversations are a demonstration of that. Like I don't know. I mean, and humbly speaking, I'm smart and I hear God. I don't know if I would have been able to arrive.
Say it.
So
Say it again. Do it
Okay.
again. Do it again. Because you
yes.
ain't humble if you won't say it like that.
Now we could actually talk about humility in
Come
another
on.
episode,
No,
but
that's true.
I am. I can hear God and I'm pretty smart. I don't know if I would have even been able to find these threads that we've done together if I've just stuck with
Yeah.
processing this on my own. Like
Yeah.
even our conversations was yeah, conversations were a demonstration of what it means to build with family.
Absolutely. Because to that point, I was thinking about anybody that's listening to this podcast. You should be getting with your family, your
Hmm.
circle, your community, and having conversations about the word of the Lord like this.
Yes.
Yes,
Share your thoughts,
absolutely.
how you are processing what makes sense to you, how it connects. Have those conversations. This is literally what the Bible told the nation of Israel to do.
Yeah.
We're to have conversations like this. When you go out to eat, have conversations like that. This is how you steward the word of the Lord in your life.
Yes.
And if you have a
Hmm.
personal prophetic prophecy, if you have a personal prophetic word that's been spoken to you, I'm out of words, y'all. Um, that's another way to process it.
Absolutely.
Take it to your family.
Mm-hmm.
Let them
Share
process
it.
Absolutely.
it with you. What do you hear when you hear this word
Hmm.
spoken over me? How should I apply this? You know me. Uh,
Hmm.
I think that's an important thing to do.
Y'all go be Noah.
My, my God. Woo.
That's good to me.
We'll see you on the next one.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right.